Damn, son, where'd you find this?
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet?
I love people as I meet them one by one. People are just wonderful as individuals. You see the whole...
My great aspiration, my greatest ambition is to be so good. Now, in that way, I'm tiresome, as I suppose, to live with, because I want to be a fantastic human being.
I am the greatest. We're not disputing that, Cassius, but how does Sonny Liston feel about it? He can't feel but one way, and let's take everything I say and like it. Because February the 25th, I'm going to take back my job. I'm the champ. He's no champ. He's a tramp.
When you see men fall, don't laugh. Learn. Learn. Because you're on your way up. And the things that tempt people to fall, you and I are not free from that temptation.
What's good, what's good, what's good? YouTube, peace and blessings, glory, praise, and honor to the Most High. Happy Thursday. I hope all is well with everyone. Let me bring this on the screen real quick before I forget. 10 minutes in. I hope all is well with everybody. Friday is around the corner. Shout out to you if you made it to another Thursday. You got home, traffic, and all. Probably had a quarter tank left in your tank. You here. I'm grateful to see you. Miss Mia, good evening.
What's
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I appreciate
How I feel?
it feels good. I had my birthday show where I did I filmed a comedy special, independently done. And it was a really good turnout. It was really good energy. The other people that performed did a great job. So I'm grateful. I'm a little tired, but I'm grateful. It was good.
Hey, you gotta put that work in if you want to see them results. And if you're not tired, you probably ain't doing enough.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So congratulations on everything that you got going on.
Thank you.
It's especially important to see more brothers and sisters thriving out here as the world is seemingly collapsing around us with the greed and just everyone out for themselves. To see others like yourself doing their thing is beautiful, man. Because you get tired of seeing negativity constantly shoved in your face, timeline after timeline after upload after upload, So I thank you for bringing some joy to the general public.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't wait until I put it together so last minute, and I decided to do it so last minute that I don't really have a real plan, but I'm excited to share it with people. I'm excited to share, what I've recorded, and just, there's parts of it that I didn't see myself because the videographer was just going around doing like mini interviews with people. So I'm excited to share it, and I hope it does bring, the same level of like joy and laughter that we had in the space. Now, comedy is always controversial, so it'll also piss people off, and that's fine. But we had a lot of fun, and I hope, again, it spreads outward.
Oh, we need a lot more joy, a lot more smiles. I don't want to go to the comment section for my laughs. Like you get on Instagram and you go under a video, but usually like the things that people are laughing at it don't be the typical comedy. It'd be like people getting hit by buses and little weird stuff. It's that type of comment section. I don't want to rely on dark humor all the time to get me through, but to each his own. You're the perfect person to have this conversation with as a black woman. There's a lot that gets discussed up here: politics, religion. We don't go into it really in entire details, but one thing we tend to overlook is the strife and the struggles that black men deal with: suicide, depression, not being heard, feeling ignored, because it comes off as if we don't have a beating heart, or we're villains, we're evil. All we do is beat the shit out of our women. We are outside robbing people. We're the scum of the earth, etc., etc. You know the stereotypes. All the pressure that we get put under. It's like, damn, we can't get a break. We're either defending ourselves or we're fighting amongst ourselves. And it's like, unfortunately, if I gotta compete, I gotta keep it completely transparent. It's not just coming from the outside world; it's coming from right inside the house. And it's like, damn, can we have a neutral discussion about this? Can we be fair across the board with this? So, in your personal opinion, let's just start here. How do you feel about the notion that black men are the scum of the earth, that we don't, or we're not allowed to feel anything, just like the stereotypes surrounding the black culture in general? We don't take care of our kids, we don't do this, we don't do that. All of us, we're just terrible. I mean, like, overall, how do you, as a black woman, seeing this from black women and from just everywhere, how do you feel about it?
I mean, I definitely don't agree that black men are the scum of the earth. I was just joking recently that sometimes I'm in like these white people groups on Facebook, or like women support groups, and the stories that they have are just like crazy, diabolical, and it kind of keeps me level-headed and knowing that the issues that we have within our community are not unique to our community. And honestly, a lot of the issues we deal with within our community are mild compared to a lot of the stuff that they're going through. And so I kind of keep that reminder. I think we live in a culture and a society that benefits from our low self-esteem. And so there's a lot of propaganda to make us as Black people feel bad about ourselves and look at each other with a lens of darkness. I think because of that propaganda, and this is the thing that's unique to the Black community, because again, most of the stuff is human issues that we all kind of go through. But I think what's unique for Black Americans is that we're constantly dealing with this double consciousness. And so we we have the propaganda that tells us a story, we have the reality that tells us a story, and then we have kind of what we dream about telling us a story, and we're constantly propping that up against a culture that's not only not our own, but is projecting a fake view of themselves in order to create like this superiority. And I think because of that, we have to do a better job at like separating the propaganda and what has been placed on us, and the views and the stereotypes that's been placed on us from 500 years of oppression and slavery, and those benefiting from our low self-esteem and low self-view and collective low view of ourselves, to what the issues that we are dealing with in our actual community. And the issues that we're dealing with, we have to be real about them, and we have to look at them and not be scared to confront them. And I think because of how we've been harmed and abused by outsiders, we are scared to really confront the issues. And a lot of times when people bring them out, like now, people again are benefiting off of controversial statements and taking advantage of our wounds for attention and for likes and for views and shares. But at the end of the day, if you hear that back and forth, like the people that are closest to you. So in this case, because you said sometimes it comes from inside the house. Inside the house, they have to deal with the fullness of you, and they have to deal with the consequences of your behavior more than anybody else. And I don't think that those people need to be silenced in order to feed the ego, of that person just because outsiders are saying something. I think that we gotta figure out how we can say, all right, that's what we saying. They saying, we know it's not true. When it's time to come to, we gotta come together and like be real with each other, whatever. But at the end of the day, what you're dealing with, is impacting me, and it is causing harm to me. And we can deal with that harm caused without making it a bigger thing. I'm kind of trailing a little bit, but yeah, I think out in there.
I've never been a type of person to look at a white person or a Chinese person or a Hispanic and say, "Oh, you do this or you do that." Even with the title that gets attached to them through movies, through commercials, through the type of food, to the neighborhoods that they kind of choreograph to fit certain cultures. Like if you go across the bridge, that's predominantly Indian. You go 2 blocks, 3 blocks up, that's a Hispanic community. They're mixed. You go all the way to the other side of town, that's where they have the suburban area, the gated communities. Um, I could never just look at a person and say, "Oh, you're black or you're white, so that means that you hung people from trees." Or you're black, that means you have 20 kids. Wow, that's ignorant. It's very stupid to just automatically assume that a person is mean or evil or treacherous just based off of what you see. Now, being on the inside, watching my community, I can also say, look, I see it. I see the crime. I see why we have these discussions and why it's so problematic. But also in the same breath, I'm not looking at every black person and saying, "Oh, you're just like this person or you're just like that person." I had a conversation with a driver a few months ago, and I was like, man, how you feel about a black kid who had their parents, they grew up in a nice neighborhood, and they didn't have the street life? Do you think that they're any less black because of their upbringing? And at first he was like, yeah, because you weren't in the mud, you weren't out here dodging bullets. And my thing was, isn't that a good thing? You know, whose parents want to see their child grow up that way? Nobody wants to see their kids become a statistic. So I'm not about to sit here and work 100 hours a week so that you can hang out with someone who's potentially going to end up in jail or dead because somebody didn't love them. So my whole rebuttal to him was, with that being said, why would that make him less black because of his upbringing? That doesn't make sense. And that's the type of mindset that keeps us divided and confused about what is what. Another added pressure. You see it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna say this and then I'll turn it over. You see a nerd who goes to school, he does all of his homework, he likes anime, whatever. The other kid, he doesn't like to be in the house. He's always smoking, and his only concern is dealing with neighborhood girls. You're making it very confusing to a community of people who wants to celebrate, but they don't know what they're really celebrating. So now you're telling me this kid has to suffer for the ignorance that's being taught to this side, but also this kid has to endure stereotypes because of things over here. It's like a crossbreed of like, damn, I can't be a smart kid, I can't be a good guy, but I can't be this either. Well, so what am I supposed to be?
Yeah, media is really a powerful tool. I went to school for media studies, and I did a paper on the demonization of Black men in the media and the political. It was called the political implications of the demonization of Black men in media in America. And I looked at probably 150 years of how specific stereotypes and imagery were used, again, to appeal to a certain political agenda. I grew up. I mean, again, I'm from Baltimore. I'm from West Baltimore. Baltimore is a predominantly Black city. Baltimore is predominantly hood, but it also has nicer parts. My mother is somebody that grew up in poverty. She lived in projects and all that across the East Coast. But she always, had an affinity for art and culture, and, would be called the bougie aunt, and so saying that, I can never hear somebody's background and make assumptions about what their interests and who they are, because my family doesn't reflect that, or being in these spaces, I know the diversity that exists in it, right? But because of that, and my mother would maybe have us in schools that were a little bit more mixed, and so when we would go to our cousins that was more in the hood, and I remember it was like these girls that would make fun and like call me white or call me and my sisters white. And I'm just like, you see me here every single day. Y'all see me in the same neighborhood as y'all. So what are you calling me white for, or making it seem, oh, you must do this, or you must live in the suburbs? You see me here. You know I live over here. So what are you talking about? But these media has told us who we are. You know what I mean? And even if something is different that you see every day, or you're not that person, then you just say, oh, that's not black, or oh, that's not what it is, because media told me that this is what black is. And I think for our particular generation who grew up on television and now like have the internet surrounded by us, like you'll see so many people take people black card because of a TV show. You know what I mean? TV shows that had to be greenlit by white producers and directors and all that type of stuff. And the same thing with the music industry. So a lot of even like this gangster culture gangster and pimp culture that we've seen in the past 30 to 50 years, you know, shaped how a generation saw their blackness. Now, I think that's become a little bit more diverse. And I don't think that younger people see it, have those same pressures as we did growing up to kind of fit that. But of course, we still see the evidence of it every time we see a rap battle or something. And, you know, if somebody come off as left tough or doesn't come from a certain community. And I remember, like, because I went to school in Philly, and, you know, it would be these arguments of which one was better, Baltimore or Philly, and it would be based off of, like, crime and violence. And I'm just like, why is that the marker? Like, I had to take a step back. Like, why is that the marker of how we're deciding what's better? But again, it's a very intentional thing. And we have to realize that. We have to recognize that even though we perpetuate it, we're not the ones doing it to ourselves, you know? And I think the more people have opportunities to create and try to create solutions, then they will understand like what we're really up against. And for me, like I'm working on like a TV show, you know, and you have to deal with people saying this, nobody wants to hear this story, or they do want to see this story, you know. So I've run it through the film festival circuit. I've gotten positive results, but I've also been rejected, and I've also heard some negative feedback. It didn't really make sense. But when I show my project in front of audiences, everybody is cracking up. You know, I haven't had a negative response from my audience, but some exec or some producer or some film selector or whatever, because they have a personal issue of something that was maybe said or done, can say no. And that is what we are coming up against. And we kind of talked about it before with social media. Like, social media makes it seem like it's vast and it's anybody can put stuff up and you can consume anything, but it's still being curated. And so we have to constantly ask ourselves, like, when we see an influx of something, what is the benefit of this particular messaging? But at the same time, when messaging resonates with people, there's an ounce of something that they're clicking with and connecting with. And that's where we have to go back as a community and say, okay, this is happening. This is happening, and we have to deal with it. And I think the other side of it too, because of that pressure of like the good and the bad and all that type of stuff, like, people will want to isolate themselves from so-called stereotype and stereotypical people. And then what you end up doing is dehumanizing your own people as well, by trying to separate and make it seem like you're not that, you know? And generally speaking, nobody is that. Nobody is that. Nobody is one thing. Nobody is one dimensional. Everybody has multiple stuff going on with them. Again, me growing up in West Baltimore, it was these guys, they sold drugs and all that, you know, hood dudes, guns, everything. Every day they went home and watched Bring It On, you know, a cheerleader movie, and they would do all that. That's what they like. That's what they thought was funny, you know. They in the cartoons and stuff. Like, we all represent so many things. And I was at this media conference when I was a teenager, and there was this lady talking about stereotypes, and she was talking about how, you know, we use stereotypes to make ourselves feel safe. And it was this white lady. I'm 15. I'm looking at her like, to make yourself feel safe. You know, I'm a 15-year-old Black girl living in this area that a stereotype could put me at risk of my life, you know, and you're saying it makes you feel safe. And I never let that go. Clearly, I'm 30, just turned 38. That was over 20 years ago. But it made me realize that people use categories and they'll try to place people into these neat little circles to help them navigate the world and navigate their sense of safety. And it's really lazy. You know, it's just like what is happening in DC right now with them deploying federal agents to try to calm crime down. It's a lazy response. There's no investigation to the crime that actually does exist there, which is way less than what it has been. Why that is happening and what are actual viable solutions. Instead, you're throwing out fear and you're creating a problem that wasn't even there before, and you're making more people feel less safe for the sake of people who aren't even there and don't even live there. That same night I had my birthday show on Tuesday. On my birthday, 2 of the comics, they ran down to an open mic in DC, and right outside it was ICE, it was the National Guard, and it was some other federal agents. And the whole block ended up getting shut down for something very, very small, you know? And it sounds like I'm running on a tangent, but that is to say that this is kind of what we do in, you know, our community. Instead of like having the courage to really get to know people, you know, we put people in boxes for our safety and for our sense of self-preservation. And then when you have an echo chamber for that, it just cements that type of behavior and that type of trauma response and how we deal with people.
Something you said that was very interesting to me. It actually, to be honest, it forces me to look at myself. You know, when God puts you in a place where you're trying to elevate, let's say you have a purpose and you're pursuing something specific, but that often is met with trials and tribulations. Usually they're uncomfortable. They're never exciting. They're never fun. And it forces you to step outside of your comfort zone. And when you said we separate ourselves, oh, I don't want to be looked at like that. Don't tie me to that. 2 things I thought about. One, there is a missed opportunity for God to be used through people to reach other people. 2, I can understand why someone would want to deviate from something that might be detrimental to their health. So it's like, damn. Ooh, bless me. It's either you're running away or you're evading being a blessing or a testimony, failing to be used by the creator to get a message across to someone who was misled and confused about what they're supposed to be doing, or you're trying to protect yourself. Hey, I went to school, I got my degrees, I did everything by the book. You want me to go into this neighborhood, possibly get robbed, shot, because they fighting over territory that don't belong to them? You want me to go over there and, I don't know, be myself around people who already look at me like I'm this or I'm that? The women don't respect nerds. The guys over here, they're definitely going to bully you or try to talk down to you or treat you like. So, Lord, you want me to go over here and put myself in that? And I'm using that as an example. As look, you could be getting ready to have a promotion right around the corner. All you got to do is stand in the middle of the fire. And many won't do that. Why? Because who wants to get burnt? Which means your faith isn't as strong as you would like to believe it is. Another added pressure to being a black man. Now, switch the roles. You got the hood dude that's trying to get into corporate America. He don't really know how to fit into that. Just like they have that street dynamic, they got their own dynamic over here with the suit and tie. Everybody got their roles. We know this on every level. I watched the video with the National Guards talking to somebody on their porch up here. This aside, if they really cared about the crime that was going on, why didn't you bring them here during the crack era? Why didn't you bring the National Guard and all of these folks up here when you had these kingpins and shit killing off the community? Why didn't you do all of this then? Why now all of a sudden you want to put all this in motion? Not to mention the fact that you just, I don't know, fired over 300,000, 200,000 black women this year alone. So it's like, how do you, knowing, let's say you get a message from God right now, and he tells you, look, this is what I need you to do. You're not going to like it, but I need you to do it because there's something that I need specific people to see through you that only you can do. Nobody else can do this. I need you to do it. Are you going to listen? Most people aren't. We're distracted. We're trying to adapt. We're trying to survive. We're trying to pretend and ignore the things that's going on around us as if we just walk by it, then it doesn't matter or exist. And we know that's not true either. So now what?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot that was being said there. And the initial talk and, and again, making assumptions about the experience I'm going to have when I enter into a certain space, I'm relying on stereotypes. If the reality is that it's always shoot, shoot, bang, bang, nobody would live there. Nobody would be there. So there's some extra value that is there. Because of that experience, yes, if I grew up in that and then I have to go to another that has a different cultural reality, then how I'm treated, how I'm perceived is going to shift that experience I have with that. And then there's always this back and forth between, well, am I going to assimilate? Am I going to stand out? Am I going to, declare who and what I am? Based on this. And also, who and what am I focusing on? You know what I mean? Am I only focusing on the people that don't really bang with me like that, that are unsafe people for me, versus the people who are safe and have provided safety for me and clarity for me? And I think That's where kind of mentality and mindset, because everything exists simultaneously everywhere and in every space and place. Like all of the things exist. It's kind of like, what do I choose to have my focus on? Now, again, me having like interesting background and just even how different my parents were, and going to schools that were more mixed and weren't in my neighborhood, and then going to different neighborhoods, I could see how people were different, but I could see how people were mostly the same. And I also never really fit in anywhere. So in order to cultivate relationships, I always had to focus on commonalities and what we do have in common, or, you know, something that we do share, versus what we don't. Because if I'm constantly focusing on what we don't, I'm constantly going to be isolated and lonely. And when you're in that practice, you realize that it is possible to connect with anybody, because at the end of the day, as humans, we're wired the same for the most part, and our wiring is towards connectivity. It's towards satiation. We like to eat, you know, we like to feel loved, and we like to feel safe. And there's all of these made up things and all these pseudoscience that's been perpetuated over the past few hundred years, 1,000 years, that create these barriers between us. And again, it takes courage to step outside that barrier. And I think that when you do step outside that barrier, then you also start to erase those boxes around you. You know, like I travel a lot, and it was at one point, especially if I was driving south, I would have all this anxiety about going through, you know, racist areas and towns, or get scared as soon as I saw somebody that looked like a redneck, or if I saw like a Confederate flag. And then I realized, like, I'm doing the same thing to them. And I know people gonna get mad at me for saying this, but I'm doing the same thing to them that I don't want to be done to me, where I'm looking at somebody and I'm looking at the fact that they got overalls on, and now I'm assuming that they don't like me, and I don't know them from a can of paint, you know? And so when I stepped outside of that and started treating people like individuals, and it's like, as soon as you show me that you disrespect me, then I'll handle it from there. But I can at least start by just saying, hey, how you doing? Have a conversation. And for the most part, I have very friendly interactions going through these places. Doesn't mean that I don't still have that anxiety. Like I just drove to New Orleans. So normally I drive like down the East Coast through North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. But that was my first time riding through Mississippi, Alabama, you know, those type of places by myself. So I didn't really know what to expect and where to stop. But the fact still remains, you know, it's very rare for people to just want to cause random harm based off of small differences, small human differences, even if they have in the back of their mind these different stereotypes or sensitivities. It's still very rare. So when you take yourself out of these boxes, you know, I'm very proud of who I am. I'm proud of my identity. I'm very, you know, racially conscious and spatially aware. I'm aware of myself as a woman, all of that type of stuff. But at the end of the day, the way I walk around, the way I move on this earth, is that none of that really matters. You know what I mean? And if I'm speaking from like a spiritual place, you know, spiritually, I'm connected with something bigger and more universal. So what's here on the surface, again, it does have an impact, but I'm not going to let it determine who I am, what I deserve, you know, where I'm allowed to be, how I'm supposed to feel. And by doing that, I also don't take in all of the stuff about, oh, this and that, and these people do that, and y'all do this and y'all do that. Like, who is y'all? Who is you talking about? If you talking about, you know, that person you had an issue with back in elementary school, deal with that issue. If you're talking about your mother and your aunties, deal with that issue. You're not talking to me. You don't even know me. So I'm not feeding into the y'all. But my compassionate self will listen and just like, again, this is coming from somewhere. This is coming from somewhere. So I'm not going to dismiss it as not existent. You know what I mean? If you're feeling this, it's coming from somewhere and it's coming from a certain experience. And I'll have some compassion for that. And I'm willing to hear it out. And I'm willing to hear, you know, where it's coming from. But I think collectively, it's time to take it to another level. And part of being free and part of freedom is not letting these lines and boxes that were drawn for us keep us there. You know, it's like what people say about the whole crab in a barrel thing. Like, crabs aren't supposed to be in a barrel, though. You know, so we don't belong in these boxes to even try to have to constantly figure and configure why they're here. It's just like, you know, knock them over, break them up. You know.
Here's a question. What would you say to somebody of our complexion who is constantly being told that you don't have the right to voice your opinion? You don't have the right to speak on me. You don't have the right to talk about this. You don't have the right to be upset. You don't have the right to feel hurt or pain. You don't have the right to cry. They keep telling us that men ain't supposed to cry. We ain't supposed to be soft. We ain't supposed to be sensitive. We just supposed to be rough and protectors and stab and fish and hunt. We not supposed to show any type of nothing. What do you say to someone who's been programmed to be that way for the beginning of time?
I mean, when I say knock over the boxes, I'm saying to deprogram. You know, you have to look at it. Does this serve me? Do these ideas of, you know, masculinity and how it's supposed to present, is this something that's actually helpful to me and helpful to the people that surround me? If it's not, then you have to make some hard decisions about for yourself what you want to do and how and why you want to do it. And you have to position yourself in a safe space to do that. You know, like I was teased a lot in middle school and I had people calling me things that weren't me. And I'm grateful that I knew it wasn't me, that I didn't internalize it too much. You know what I mean? But it forced me to almost be like Teflon. You can say what I'm not supposed to. And I've always been different. So I've always had to deal with on the other side because we're getting it on both sides. As a woman, you know, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do that, blah, 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 blah. Just like I've been called white, I've been called the boy, you know. I've been called masculine for having an opinion. Basic human needs. So I'm not the person, if a man is sitting across from me and he's showing a full range of feelings, I'm not the person that tell him he can't do that because he's a man. Because I had people tell me that I couldn't have my full range of emotions because I was a woman. And again, most of this stuff comes from this binary, European, capitalistic, like that don't really have nothing to do with who we are and where we're from. And that is one thing that we've struggled with since being on this land, you know. But also, like I said, if you keep hearing people saying certain things and not all of it is real, and I think, again, we make stuff bigger than what it is. Something triggers us and then we say it's everybody saying it. It's not everybody saying it. And somebody could be sitting right next to you letting you cry on their shoulder, and you're telling them that nobody let them cry. You made that person a nobody. I've had people do that to me so many times where it's just like, nobody cares, nobody this, nobody that. I'm like, so I'm a nobody because I'm sitting here caring. I'm sitting here supporting you. So how did I become a nobody? So, when you're in a certain mental space, and I totally understand it, because just a week ago, I was in that mental space. When you're in a certain mental space, you're only recognizing, those things that are causing you harm. But that's your work to do. That's your work to say, why do I feel beholden to this? Why is this messaging so loud? Why is this the messaging that I'm getting? And what is the impact it has on me? And also, why am I attracted to those that are giving this particular messaging, even though I know it doesn't work for me? Because people are diverse, and not everybody feels the same way about different, for every woman that say you got to make $100,000, there's also a woman that make $100,000 and don't care how much you make. You know what I mean? There's so many people want so many different things. And I think a lot of times when you're in a position where you keep hearing or feeling or seeing or getting the messaging of stuff that's not what you want, a lot of times it's because, one, it might have just not been exposed to something, something else, but it could be early programming, and you're just like, this is what it's supposed to be. And it don't have to be what it's supposed to be. Or again, it was something early that you might have been attracted to, and you say, this is what I want. But as you got older and you realize, no, this doesn't actually work. This actually isn't fair. I shouldn't be in spaces where people are telling me that I shouldn't have a voice and I shouldn't speak up and I shouldn't have a full range of emotion. Like I said, the other side of that is, how are my emotions, how are my opinions impacting other people and impacting those around me? And if it's impacting people negatively, what needs to be done about it? Either I'm in the wrong space and I'm out of alignment, or there's some toxicity or hurt or harm inside of me that is permeating outside of my pores and causing more harm around me. And the devil is in the details. You know what I mean? I think that's what makes these conversations hard, because somebody from your perspective, and we don't really know each other, right? So I don't know what your experience is, but let's assume that you're a good dude, you know what I mean? And you're getting this message, and when you hear it, it's just like, it really feels like a stab to the heart. But the person on the other side that's saying it, they're referencing an experience they had with somebody that's not like you, and they're not being clear about what that experience is. But you're taking it like they talking about you. And so we be having these conversations like at each other, where we're talking about two different things. On one hand, we're talking about, again, there's things that are projected on us around masculinity and blackness and all of that. And I have a son. So, I see it from that perspective as well. And I just had an incident yesterday. My nephew was over, and my nephew is tall for his age. He's stocky, but he's a kid, he's a sweet kid. He's very sensitive. And my daughter, she's a little cute girl, but she's scrappy and she's violent. And both of them got into it, And I didn't see the fight. My oldest daughter had recorded it and she sent it to the whole family. And my family was livid. And they, were really upset with him. And what I got was both of them doing things that were wrong. Now, come to find out, he was the one that kind of started everything. But a lot of their triggers was the fact that he's bigger, you know what I mean? And a lot of their fears was thinking about him being outside of the home, being outside of somebody and just being looked at as this big black boy, and what comes with that. And that pressure to put on a child so young, where they might have been hit and he just like, I'm just defending myself. But in reality, in a couple years, those optics could turn into something completely different. you put your hands and you slam down a girl, that could be jail time. But those of us that have also experienced that as women and know that a lot of times it's not jail time, you know? So I think we just have to have more candid conversations with each other out of compassion and really like listening to each other, taking it in, really being mindful of the messaging that we're sending to the children around us around these things. How can we break some cycles? How can we break patterns? But also look at like why and how some of these things came to be. You know, some of it is from a PR campaign, you know, and some of it is from ancient books. There's a huge range. But I don't know, you know, I think again, I like to relate to people as human beings. You know, I have my little jokes and I have what I have to say about like gender-based things. And a lot of my input in these conversations are the fact that I wasn't always allowed to be a girl, you know, for whatever reason. So it forced me at a very young age to be like, okay, so what does it mean to be a girl? What does it mean to be a boy? And I had to be like hyper aware of that because of being teased about certain stuff, or even my mother being upset about like when I didn't want to dress super girly. I never really liked dresses and all of that. But then growing up and being a woman that's more quiet, and so then automatically being perceived as feminine just from being quiet. So it gets weird. And so for me, I've had to define for myself what I want, what I'm willing to participate in, and what I'm not willing to participate in. And I think that more men, especially, you know, more straight men, because I think the view of masculinity is way more rigid, need to continue to have the conversations among yourselves and really decide like what is necessary, what is needed, and what is healthy, and what is, you know, healthy for you as an individual, but what is healthy for you as a member in community, a family member, a employee, and a partner. And I think as crazy as stuff looks and feels right now, and how everybody feel like these arguments are so heightened, I think the deconstruction of it will create, and I've seen it amongst younger people, will create new rules. And in those new rules, hopefully there's a healthier balance, and that, you know, our men in particular, because we're talking about our men, are allowed to have their full range of humanity.
I agree 1000%. And look, I'll be as transparent as possible. I've been in spaces where I work with people and they'll talk about situations they have with their children's mother, and or they'll share stories about how they were shot or they were in life or death situations. And even though I didn't put myself in that space, I can still, first of all, this is not about me right now at the moment. This is about you sharing something about your life with me. You didn't have to open up at all about any of that. So I'm here to kind of honor that. Let me go ahead and let you get that off your chest, because the truth be told, most humans don't care about what we got going on as an entirety. We leave from off of this stream and we go about our day. Most of these people are not praying for you. They're not thinking about you afterwards. They going right back to their scheduled programming, back to their scrolling. So, like with the platform itself, we need to have the uncomfortables. Talk about the molestation. Talk about the drug dealing. Talk about the crimes, the infidelities, the lying, the days where you just felt like your parents ain't fuck with you. Talk about the pressure that was on you to be a good athlete, or the pressure was on you to be a good boy. You're not the one. You're not supposed to be the one causing problems in the household. You're supposed to be the quiet one. You're supposed to be going to school and come home. You're not the one that goes out here and make mistakes. You can't be dealing with these girls. You can't be out here smoking and drinking and getting your hair plaited, and that's not how I raised you. You can't do that. Let every side voice their views on life however they want it. Because guess what? Everybody's walk is different, and the lack of empathy is clearly present. The lack of consideration is clearly evident. In order to break any of this, pride has to go, ego has to go. You have to feel safe. Now, what does that really look like? Yeah, we're on YouTube. Yeah, we're posting and uploading videos. We're doing whatever it is we do with our content. Yeah, there are people who see it, but it's bigger than that. It's deeper than that. For me, anyway, what this does, I want you to feel. I want your soul to feel heard. I want your inner man to feel heard. Not the perception of what the world sees. I want the person who's alone by themselves when nobody's around. I want that person to show up. I can't talk to your physical shell. I can't get through to that. I need to see the person in the spiritual sense show up for me. The only way I'm going to be able to get that person is if we're raw and unfiltered. We can't do politics. We can't have that paywall up. We can't be up here kissing people's butt so they feel comfortable enough to be a part of these realities and truths, because what you saw might not have been what I saw, but it happened to you. And it happened to me, and it happened to whoever else. We need to address it. What I look like getting on the phone with you and talking about everything that happened in my household, when I know you don't really care about that shit. You looking, and I'm be honest with y'all. Y'all look at us, you see us on these screens, and all you really see is just a random person on social media talking shit. Or they're just rambling. Or they don't know what they're talking about. You don't really have any respect for our words. You're not really honoring what we're conveying or trying to convey. To you, this is just a temporary time frame to occupy you before you go back to watching Law and Order or whatever. To me, I'm trying to actually get something to happen. I want a breakthrough. Can he have a breakthrough with politics and social standings and having friend groups? Because if I got to tell the truth, that means I'm going to lose people or I'm going to gain people. And that's a risk that you have to take when you bring this up. And a lot of people don't do it. And you said a lot. I wholeheartedly agree. I don't know why we don't do this enough, but this is one of them topics that I felt like it absolutely had to happen.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to the vulnerability it take to even bring it up and have the conversation. I know it's something that a lot of people are grappling with and struggling with right now. And like I said, I see I see it with my own son who's just 9, you know, and trying to understand some of the things that he's felt, seen, experienced, or have happened to him. And there's a lot of things that he's shielded from. And as a parent, it's kind of scary because you know how the world might treat him when he hasn't been brought up in a way that they're going to perceive him, you know? And so it's been trying to figure out, like, you know, that resilience and that self-awareness and that self-confidence, you know, that no matter what someone is saying and trying to tell you who you are, you're firm in who you are, and you make sure that you're in spaces that embrace that. And I know for myself, how as I've gotten older, that has become increasingly important for me. And again, I can tussle a little bit, but for the most part, it's just like, okay, that's what you said you wanted. That's what you said. Great. I hope you get it. I'm gonna be around the people that like me and that I like. You know, if what I got going on is perfectly fine. And I think that everybody deserves, you know, to be with people and around people that embrace their humanity, and the fullness of that. And so that's my final word on the matter.
Hopefully, this reaches somebody's ear that needs to hear it. You know, that's one of the beauties about having these documented. You can always go back. Maybe you might be a random scroller on YouTube somewhere. Then you just happen to come across it and it catches your curiosity. I want people to feel comfortable. I want people to feel open. I want you to be honest with yourself. It ain't really about me anyway. It's about us all in general, finding out who we really are, embracing who we really are, and living our best while we can live our best. So, shout outs to you, shout outs to Robin, shout outs to everybody who pulled up today. Appreciate everybody for hanging out with us. Anything you want to plug before we get up out of here?
Yeah, the show that I'm working on, My Little Gig, is MYLORGIG. I'm making it available to the public next Tuesday, August 19th. So please follow. It's My Little Gig on Instagram and on TikTok, and it'll be on Imani Network YouTube page. But if you follow Instagram, TikTok, you'll be directed to the link. And then we're going to be launching our Kickstarter campaign. The story is about a girl that's doing all these different gigs to try to make sure she raised the money for the rent. We got the first episode done. We're trying to get the money for the rest of the episodes. It's going to be really funny. It's going to be really thoughtful. And we're excited about people seeing it. And I really need people to run the numbers up. So please go check it out, like, follow, subscribe, so that you can be present when it becomes public. When it becomes public, I need you to like, I need you to comment. Even if you're doing hateful comments, we just need engagement. So just put that out there. And then I'll definitely have my special out there. But it's all about My Little Gig right now. So that's the main plug. I appreciate everybody that's, been watching and following all that.
Yeah, this has been dope. This has absolutely been dope. I love the gems. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your knowledge with us, man. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. I hope there's restoration and peace in your household. To everybody that's watching, drive safe. Have a good night. And do me a solid before you go.
What's the goddamn button?
Appreciate y'all. See y'all tomorrow morning.
Thank you.